All right, welcome into the Bobby Carpenter Show. We got my man Joshua Perry joining us today, fresh out of Chi-Town. We're gonna have Schlegs popping on here in a little bit. We've got the NFL draft. The portal situation for Ohio State's looking pretty good. Where did the Buckeyes all go? We got questions from listeners. Big weekend, Joshua. I started it off, I'm gonna be honest, the first time I've been in New Orleans outside of a game situation. So I was there when you were part of the Ohio State team that took down Bama in the Sugar Bowl in the
Sure.
14-15 year. And then unfortunately, I was also there in 2007 against
Mm.
LSU for the BCS National Championship, which wasn't great. But it was our first time kind of exploring the city. And it was great because, it's football city. They got the Saints. So every bar had the draft on. So
Yeah.
got a little live music, got some
Get some
draft in,
cocktails.
got plenty of cocktails. And I'll be honest,
Love that. Love that.
Bourbon Street, Joshua, might be the most unique place in the United States. Like New Orleans and Louisiana, it's almost its own country. Like you don't really feel
Yeah.
like you're in the U.S.
You just got to make sure you don't drift too far off of Bourbon Street. That's where all the real debauchery happens. You got
Oh
the
yeah.
the safe debauchery that everybody promotes and condones, and then you got the other stuff that we want to avoid.
Well, I mean, do you want to avoid it? That's always
I
the question.
personally do. The
Yeah.
people can make a decision for themselves.
Yeah. I wandered out of there and it's amazing. In the daytime, it seems very normal. It feels like you're
Hmm.
in, a European city. And then when nighttime comes, that's why I feel like that's the city that's most closely associated to vampires because the difference
Sure.
between day and night in New Orleans and on Bourbon Street, French Quarter, it is a very, very special
You know what
place.
they say, Bobby? They say the freaks come out at night. So, go down to Bourbon
Oh,
Street and you see if that's
coach.
true.
Hey, first night, Thursday night, pretty tame. We were there Friday night. Oh Lord. I mean, I took a cruise down Bourbon Street at like 1:30 heading back to the hotel and the
Oh,
stuff that
yeah.
I saw,
Hmm.
uh yeah, I mean a lot of things. I wish I could have a couple drinks and maybe unsee some of it, but the good news is all behavior is really socially acceptable. So if
Yeah.
you're with someone like your one friend or two friends that always like to try to up the ante, like I'm not sure what you could do in Bourbon Street that would actually garner like people to stop, like a full record skip where people would look at you.
I got to examine that real quick because if you are not the friend that likes to up the ante, I feel like that's a group I got to be away from because if there's somebody
Oh,
in there who's egging people on more than you, I mean, this is a shame.
yeah, it's why I really enjoy a couple of my friends because
Yeah.
you think that I'm a level here. I mean, they've surpassed that and gone to a level that's really not safe to the point they'll talk to anybody about anything at
Yeah.
any time, anywhere. And I mean, the amount of energy one of my friends has, and he's like in his 50s, like
No
it's
shot.
yeah,
No
it's
shot.
very, very aggressive. And also, happy belated birthday to you. And before we get into any of the draft talk and everything, you came back to Columbus, Ohio. Unfortunately, I wasn't here, so I couldn't help celebrate with you. But what did we have in store for your first birthday as a father?
Yeah, it was crazy. It was great. Thank you very much. Yeah, we came back and we were back for a wedding, so I hadn't anticipated that we were going to do anything outside of, go to a birthday dinner. And my wife had planned this beautiful surprise party. So I got to spend the evening with some of my friends I hadn't seen in a while, had some libations, some good cocktails. Got to show the baby off as well, which was really nice. And he's a super chill kid. He slept through the whole thing, which was amazing. So had a great time. It was a really good experience there. I got to thank my wife. I didn't think she'd be able to pull something like that off because I can usually sniff those things out, but she got one over on me.
Did we have a Craig Fada sighting?
So Craig Fada was on the invite list, and he's a super busy man. So he sent me a long text. Unfortunately, I did not get to see him. I am planning a trip to Indianapolis. I'm pulling up on Craig because we got to relive some of the old days.
That'll be good. That'll be good. Anytime you get a chance. And how old are you? Are you 30, 29?
30. It's a dirty 30.
Oh gosh, yeah, it's the beginning of the end, dude. Like
Yeah, that's
that's,
what they say.
you know, your 30s is where you got to start grinding. And then like when you hit 40 like I did this year, you really look and like really the next meaningful birthday is 65 years old when you retire. Like it goes downhill in a hurry. Like people say 50, like, oh yeah, it's the half century, but who really is around to see the full century mark? Like 40 and 30, that's kind of it in the halfway zone for especially for guys that played football. Um,
Oh man.
yeah, it's just stark dose. Life comes at you fast.
I guess
Marvin
so.
Harrison Jr.,
Yes.
fourth overall, Arizona Cardinals. a lot of events, crazy stuff around the draft, held really chalky early on. If you look at the
Mhm.
first 5 picks, even by first 7,
Yep.
kind of your thoughts of where that went.
Yeah, I mean, first off, for Arizona, there was conversation about do you make a trade? What would a package that would be enticing enough look like? And I think they made the right decision. Marvin Harrison Jr., way too good to pass up. You decided that Kyler Murray is a guy that you want to continue forward with. And I think you can make a real evaluation on Kyler's future when you have a wide receiver like Marv there. So that was super smart there. I agree with you. The first handful of picks, it certainly felt like the way a lot of people had mocked them. You had the first 3 picks for the quarterbacks. You had Marv go. There was a lot of conversation there toward the lead up of the draft, what the Chargers were going to do, and they went offensive line, of course. Then you got to 8,
Yeah.
and Michael Penix Jr. comes off the board. And I know a lot of people have thoughts about that decision. I actually don't hate it. Because the reality is you got to pay a quarterback like Kirk to get him in the building. But he's older and he's got injury concerns. I mean, if you want to compete, you got to have a guy like that. But I also think you should be thinking about the future. And this is the cheapest you're going to get a quality quarterback is on a rookie deal. So if Kirk doesn't work out or he's banged up, I think they got a good option there. I was shocked that it took 15 picks to get the first defensive player. I think that
Yeah.
was the big eye opener there and kind of where the league has gone in terms of offense. But certainly fun watching the first round. I mean, I thought a lot of teams made really smart decisions there. Got interesting toward the end too with a couple of receivers that came off the board, but a lot of action.
Was, and like you said, the first real chalky early on, Joe Alt going to the Chargers. It seemed like you thought for sure they were going to definitely go with an offensive lineman. You keep moving. They have JC Latham goes off at 7, Neighbors at
Yep.
6. And that Penix pick, and here's what I told someone about this as we were talking. It's like, why would they do that? They just signed Kirk Cousins. I'm like, yeah, here's the thing. Like Kirk plays the game a very specific type of way. And I think any young quarterback could benefit from it because he is incredibly rigid and disciplined with how he
Yes.
operates. Because he just doesn't have the elite physical tools to go out there and freelance.
Right.
So for a guy to learn from him, to understand that, and then you obviously put your own spin on the position. I think it's good. I said this: if Kirk Cousins, you've got to make a decision on some skill players there. You've got a tight end that's really talented. You got some really good players. You got to get
Yep.
a firm evaluation. Rookie quarterback's not going to do that. And if Kirk Cousins plays really good this year, and you feel like, hey, Michael Penix Jr. is in a good enough spot that you can play him, you could probably trade Kirk Cousins and probably get a 3 from a team that is in contention that needs a guy. So it's not the worst decision in the world.
I'm there with you. I think there are a lot of options to this one. And I think we have to, when it comes to quarterbacks, we got to reframe the way we think about finances. Like a high level starter is going to be expensive, you got to have a replacement at some point. You got to get a rookie in the building at some point. I absolutely don't hate it. I think they're going to be in a good spot.
Well, we got Schlegs coming up next. What do you think about the draft? We'll find out here on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. We got my man Anthony Schlegel here, cocked, locked, and ready to rock. I know that he's a huge draft connoisseur. He's got a million
Oh,
things going, so maybe he didn't get a chance to see all of it, Schlegs, but you got to see some Buckeyes going. Marvin obviously going to Arizona. You being a defensive guy, your thoughts on Mike Hall going in the second round to Cleveland? I thought that was a nice spot for him and a place that he could probably really thrive.
well, first off, Joshua, happy birthday.
Thank
Second,
you.
happy to be talking with you guys on a Sunday evening after watching the Columbus Fury get their 4th in a row. And I say the spike to the face is undefeated. And it was fantastic. But about the draft, because that's what everybody wants to discuss. I love Marvin, and I know that you didn't ask me about Marvin.
Yeah, talk about
going
him.
there. But here's one thing that I really like. Paris Johnson has been in the building recently, and I never really got to experience and talk to Paris. And 1, unbelievable human being. 2, giant of a man.
Yeah.
3, all about ball. And I think that now 2 years in a row, they got 2 first-round picks from Ohio State. They understand the culture. And I've seen things on social media, not just football in particular, but when kids come out of a program, it's like, make them adapt to you, right? That's a mindset and a mentality. And I think it's a differentiator. We'll get into this maybe later about the most all time, but a differentiator at Ohio State is the development. It's the development for the next level, because again, It's not the first contract, it's the second and third. And guess what? They don't develop dudes in the league. When you come there, you're an asset already, right? You do your developing. Are they going to coach you? 100%. But their job's on the line. Like, they want to go get the guys that already want to work. So by having that mentality, by having that development in college, it's setting them up for success. So I really like that one. With Mike going to Detroit, he's kind of a pass rush specialist.
Cleveland, yeah.
But but like, that's what they want to do. Like, you have to get after the quarterback, especially in that division, loaded at the quarterback position. Then you talk about Cade. You didn't ask this, but I'm gonna go into it. I really like Cade to the Texans, and here's why. One, the quarterback. Two, they got Dalton Schultz, veteran guy, signed a contract extension. Cool. You look at the rest of that roster, it's a lot of later round draft picks that have been hurt or haven't really proven themselves yet. So as an opportunity, again, you guys got to understand the NFL, there's 53-man rosters. They can bring 70. That might have changed in a hot minute, but that's how it was. You're going to have 45 active. But being the third tight end, that's a good deal. Sometimes they'll carry 4 if you're a really good special teamer. Not really. They would like 3. They might carry another linebacker. And also it goes into how many they carry on the offensive line position. But still, I think that's a really good one. And Tommy out to the Raiders, they got a really veteran linebacker group, but I think he kind of fits that mentality. Tommy is 100% all about ball. So it's great that these guys got drafted, and I'm happy for the places that they went to, Bob.
Yeah, we can start with Tommy because, Joshua, I've never seen this, and I've never been privileged to have a head coach in Antonio Pierce who was a linebacker.
Yep.
So I feel like if you want to be in a spot where you have a chance to get the coach's attention by making some plays and doing things, that's the spot for Tommy to be able to do it, is in a place like LA or Las Vegas.
It almost feels like, one of those draft picks where the coach was probably like, I want to get this guy. This is a guy that I'm interested in coaching. I think he's going to fit what we want to do. And we've seen from Antonio Pierce too, when he's talking to the media, the guy's got a hard edge, man. Like he's a football guy, like old school, and he wants people to know it. And we all know Tommy, no nonsense with him. He wants to play the game, and he wants to play it like a throwback linebacker. So I'm certainly excited to see that fit there. Talking about Mike Hall, and Bobby, you and I talked about him a ton in the lead up to the draft here. Cleveland is a phenomenal spot because he's going to have an opportunity to get one-on-one in pass rush scenarios because of the way that defensive line is constructed and because of the way they want to play defense too. They want to get after the quarterback, and it's a big part of their mentality. I think they're built knowing that the front is going to be the strength. So you bring a guy like Mike Hall in there, maybe not going to be your best run stopper if he's getting double teamed off the line of scrimmage, but he's going to cause disruption in the run game because he is quick and he's strong and he's switched up and he's going to get after the quarterback. I think that made a ton of sense. And you bring the guy back home. He was a Cleveland Browns fan growing up, grew up right down the street. Like, I love the pick for him. And I think it's a great fit. He's just got to go to work, make sure that he's doing all the professional things. And I think he's going to have a great career there in Cleveland.
I will say, I'll add to this. I think that speaking of the bottom two of Cade and Tommy, I think they have a really good initial mindset going in, and that is that they're just football players. One of the things that I made a mistake in my career was the fact that I was a linebacker. But when you get to the league, when you're making a roster, the identity should be, I just got to be the best football player that I can possibly be. And that goes back to your point, Joshua, when you're head coach of a linebacker and you look at a guy like a Tommy Eichenberg, it's like, there's a guy right there that could add value immediately on the field. We got some linebackers. I think he can catch my eye as a linebacker. But at first, I need him to prove himself doing this. And that's playing special teams. And it's a pivotal role in it. And I think both those guys are set up for good opportunities.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting you say that because like Joshua was saying, like if you're getting drafted as a linebacker by the Raiders, like your head coach is signing off on that and he likes you. Yeah. And what's interesting with playing against Antonio Pierce for a while, like wasn't the most physically gifted dude, really smart, really cerebral player, would get everybody all lined up. And it feels that's a lot of what Tommy is going to be able to do. And they never asked their Mike to do a ton of things that took a high degree of athleticism. Like they protected that position and made sure that was kind of the maestro. And so hopefully he earns his chops on special teams. Yeah, Joshua, and then moves there.
I just wanted to jump in on that. That's a great point that you make about how they protect that position, because if you're asking me, do you want, Tommy running the middle in Tampa 2? It's like, probably not the most ideal thing. But if we did learn anything, he tested really well in short areas, change of direction, right? And like if you can do that in the league and you can chase in that box and then you can get outside, take really good angles, be a smart football player, you can find yourself a little bit of a role there on top of what you can do with special teams. So I'm glad you brought that up.
And we'll get into some of this a little bit more too, Joshua. But Schlegs, a couple guys I thought the back end probably going to get drafted and didn't end up. Josh Proctor gets signed in your old stomping grounds of Jacksonville. Xavier Johnson to Buffalo, which I really like there, given their receiver position. Matthew Jones in Miami, Matt Jones there, and then Steel Chambers up in Detroit. And they love the flexibility, I'm sure, of what he can provide and some of his stuff. Surprised that those guys, like I thought maybe one or two of those guys would be 6th or 7th rounders.
I agree with that, Bob. I think, sometimes it's better to be an undrafted free agent because then you get to pick kind of because a lot of people are coming after you like, hey, where do you want to go between these three? Then you're going to look at their roster and you're going to see where you could add the most value. And these are things that you take in consideration, the things that we mentioned earlier. So sometimes it's better than just having to go somewhere because, again, people forget about this. In the league, it's about fits. And you want to go to a place that you fit in. So I think where they're kind of going, like Josh going down to Jacksonville, he's an older guy, he's a veteran guy. I think he can add value there. You look at Steele going to Detroit, they have grit. It's the same mentality of program, I would say, that is at Ohio State. So Xavier, to your point, at Buffalo, I think those are all good fits for them. Do I think they could have potentially got drafted? Yes, but sometimes it's not meant to be. I'll give you this though, man. All I know is Tatanka, the White Buffalo, Andrew Norwell was an undrafted free agent. And 6 years later, he's the highest paid guard in the National Football League.
I love that we go by Tatanka there with his name. Norwell, straight masher. And
oh my gosh.
Yeah, they know Joshua knows. I mean, testify to Andrew Norwell what he was like to play against.
No, I mean, he's a certified nut job. And I say that in the most complimentary way. The dude, first off, he looks like he's a nut. He had all the long hair. He looked sweaty. He looked stinky. Like he just looked like a guy who you didn't want to mix it up with in the trenches. And that's exactly what they got. But this was the thing. And Schlegs, I know you saw this, Bobby. You saw this as well. Norwell was a dude that he matured as a person as much as anything. And I think that's why he had staying power in the league. And so you get that kind of that edge and you mix it with now being a professional and it clicks. And like, I'm looking at Steel Chambers, for example, and we had him over here on the show. Dude's a nut job. Well, his head coach is a nut job too. Feels like it's going to be a good fit. Like this is why it's good sometimes to be an undrafted guy, because you can get into a system where you know you can be yourself.
Well, and you mentioned Steele going to Detroit. We talk about Tommy going to Vegas, like both of those guys, and even, Cade going down in Houston. It's amazing that all three of those guys are playing for former players as their head coach. And former players as head coaches, regardless of where they were drafted, especially like Dan Campbell, I think was like a 3rd or 4th round pick, but a grinder in the league. Antonio Pierce, I think, was a UDA, like undrafted free agent. I mean, so those guys, they appreciate the grind. And they love guys in the back end of the draft, undrafted, who are going to come in and work and get it done. So I think it's really good spots for everybody. We'll continue a little bit of this draft talk, kind of look at some things at large, maybe some of the fits, what happened in the first round. We're going to say goodbye to our guy Schlegs, though, because he's got to go do some more stuff, train some dudes, some dudettes, everything in the world out there. Thanks for stopping by, Schlegs. We appreciate it, sir.
Absolutely.
All right, go Bucks. More Bobby Carpenter Show coming up next. All right, welcome back in the Bobby Carpenter Show. Guy Schlegs, always bringing some juice, getting fired up there, talking about some of his guys. Always loves it. Joshua, it's interesting. The draft this year, like I said, real chalky, first 7 picks. And all of a sudden you see Michael Penix at 8, and then Minnesota, boom, at 10, drafting J.J. McCarthy, and then Bo Nix at 12. And I'm like, man, like if you're sitting there at 13, you're feeling pretty darn good because you've had a receiver, a couple receivers, couple tackles, a lot of quarterbacks. It's like, hey, I really kind of get my pick of like the rest of the position groups out there to be able to go do that when you have all those quarterbacks pushed to the top.
Yeah, the interesting thing though is that, like it almost feels now like you can only take certain positions in the first round of the
Yeah.
draft. You can take a quarterback, you can take a wideout, you can take an offensive tackle, probably not an interior guy until later on. You could probably take a corner, you could take an edge rusher. Everything else, you got to wait. You got to wait. So I do think that, especially if you were looking at defense, you had your pick of the litter starting at 13. I mean, everybody's to your point. You had six quarterbacks off the board, three wide receivers by that point. It's like you can get whatever you want. If you were one of those teams that was, looking at maybe you wanted to get a wide receiver and you weren't high enough up, this is a deep class, but now you're kind of picking through, okay, what do we really want to do here? If you're looking for an offensive lineman, certainly, again, a deep class, but you're asking the question, which of these guys do we really like? It was really unique there once we got past the run of quarterbacks and finally started seeing some defensive guys come off the board too. But yeah, I mean, it was one of the most interesting drafts that I've watched recently.
Surprised that Bo Nix went 12. He was the guy that I thought could have drifted into the second round. And forget even drifting in the second round. I mean, he was off in the first half of the first round. So kind of surprised when they kept talking about Sean Payton with him, though. I know this. I mean, Sean Payton does a very good job evaluating quarterbacks. He was the one that was responsible for getting Tony Romo in Dallas, resurrected Drew Brees' career. Like, does a good job with those guys. So it seems like there must be something there with Bo Nix that he really likes.
Yeah, I was a little bit shocked, to be completely honest. I thought Bo Nix was a guy who played really efficiently in college, no doubt. My question is how much of it does how much does it translate to the NFL? And he played with some really good players too, and I think that
Yep.
makes it tougher to evaluate. Obviously, they felt emphatic about the pick. And I had mentioned this before the draft too. JJ McCarthy felt like he could have been Will Levis for this year in terms of some of the hype that he was receiving and just the odds of where he was going to be picked in some of the sports books. Felt like the hype was incongruent with some of the production at times, especially later in the year. He had a stretch where he was averaging like 120 pass yards a game with no touchdowns toward the end of the season. It just made you ask the question, you figure out that he's really quarterback five in this scenario. I think the most unique thing with the quarterbacks, though, is after Bo Nix goes at 12, you went 137 picks, I
Yeah.
believe,
Spencer
before
Rattler.
another quarterback. And it was Spencer Rattler, which I'm shocked. I wouldn't touch him. And I know there's a talent there, and I get it. But between him, a guy like Joe Milton, I don't think there should have been another quarterback drafted in this class. But it was really like the way the board shook out. We knew it was probably the top three. Then it was the next three, and then it felt like a huge gap, and it was a pretty big gap there.
Yeah, to say the least. I was watching on Sunday, I saw that Spencer Rattler pick, and I was thinking, I'm like, who are the other quarterbacks that have been taken? Then they flashed the graphic up, 100, whatever the pick gap was. I'm like, my goodness, like this is the next
Yeah.
guy. And then, like you said, you have Milton in there. Those are two guys that have a lot of ability.
Yes.
But what's really hard at the quarterback position to evaluate, and this is one of the things like, you start looking at these guys and hey, they can all throw the football really well, or at least they should be able to. But that's not the delineating factor of what makes you a good quarterback. It's the anticipation, it's the accuracy, it's the progression through reads. Those are the things, Joshua, that elevate guys. And you were out was Phil, yeah, Rivers was still in
Yep.
and like
Yes.
you look at Philip Rivers throw a football and you're like, this guy, and I've always said like he throws it like he's got a broken arm.
Bro, it's the
The
ugliest
ball,
mechanics I've ever seen.
yeah, but the ball is always where it's supposed to be when it's supposed to be there.
Yep. Yeah. I mean, he was and he was an alpha dog, right? Like he was a guy who
Yeah.
walked in, he commanded the offense, he would fuss at dudes, try to bring the best out of them. The amount of time he spent too in the meeting room with the guys and with the coaching staff, it was, it's real quarterbacky stuff. And I think that's what they're trying to figure out, right? Like you look at Spencer Rattler, and I don't want to take shots at the guy, but like you probably asked the question to a certain degree, how great of a teammate is he? How mature is he? How is he going to fight through adversity? Is he going to be the guy who's showing up at 6 a.m. to do breakdowns? And oh, by the way, you might get a 5 touchdown game, but you could also get a 5 interception game out of him. I look at Joe Milton, and it's one of the prettiest athletes you could ever see with one of the strongest arms out there. Nobody was really able to coach that guy into feeling like what he should be based off of the physical traits. And so, you get later in the draft and you want to gamble on some of these guys, and they're not going to play right away. So hopefully you can coach them. But once you got past probably top six guys, and even further down there, like, you start getting into Devin Leary and Sam Hartman territory. It was really asking a question about which one of these
Yeah.
guys we want to take a flyer on.
Very interesting. Michigan, people thought they could maybe break the single draft record for players. Georgia has 15 in 2022. Outside of that, LSU had 14, and so did Ohio State in 2020 and 2004, respectively. Michigan coming in with 13, so still wasn't even able to beat Ohio State with that. Joshua was surprised that happened because people were talking about them maybe having 15 or even 16 sliding in.
No, and the way that I saw it shaking out, like, of course, JJ McCarthy was going to be a first round pick. I love Mikey Samer still. Love Jenkins there
Chris
on the
Jenkins, that's a
interior.
steal. I think he's
Yeah,
going to be really good.
I agree. And yes, I agree wholeheartedly. But then after that, I was asking the question, like, I evaluated their offensive line and I said, was it the individuals? Was it the group? Was it the coaching? And it felt like a lot of it was the group played really well together. I thought they were one of the best coach units in the country. And oh, by the way, a lot of these guys are super veteran dudes. So you're trying to also figure out high floor, but where's the ceiling at, right? And like,
Yeah.
are you going to invest that much in a guy where you feel like he's bumping his head against the ceiling? I looked at some of the players on defense, and they were even harder to evaluate for me. I was looking at some of the schemes, especially in the front seven. And I'm like, well, I see why they were productive because the schemes were phenomenal. But, Mike Barrett's a 6-year guy. I love him to death. I thought he was a great leader. Athletically super limited. I'm not shocked that he was a late round pick. Josh Wallace, I'm not shocked that he was a guy who went undrafted. The edge rushers that were in there, a similar deal. And Michigan was one of those scenarios. They had a lot of guys go in the 7th that probably wish they had an opportunity to pick their destination. So I think as much as those guys developed and as good as those players are, the schemes were phenomenal, and that coaching staff did a hell of a job with what they had.
It really did. A lot of news there with that. And ironically, one little quick nugget too. Zach Zinter, the Wolverine guard, I believe, who got drafted in the 3rd round to Cleveland, teaming up with Mike Hall. They took him the 2nd. I believe Mike's
Was
the guy
Mike the one who rolled up on him?
Yeah, give him the old leg break this year. So interesting
Yikes.
to track that rivalry up here on the lake as we move forward. Coming up, trophies are being returned. I think it's long overdue. We'll see what Joshua thinks here coming up next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. Well, Heisman trophies are given every year. One, the most outstanding player in college football, but one was taken away. And Reggie Bush lost his. And Joshua, when I saw that was 14 years ago, my oldest son is 14. He will be 15 this year. And to think that he wasn't even alive when Reggie Bush had his Heisman trophy is kind of crazy to think about. Reggie was stumping forward. I think there were some prominent figures, Johnny Manziel coming out and being on his behalf. I don't know if that's the guy you exactly want in your corner, but I think Tim Tebow, and there were some other guys that, now when you look at how much Caleb Williams and some of these guys are getting paid, like, hey, he didn't do anything to actually cheat in game. His family took some money, and it's kind of paltry sums relative to what guys are getting today. So he gets his Heisman trophy back. Your thoughts, and was it long overdue?
Yeah, I mean, not only what's going on today, but if you ever, flip on Netflix and see some of the specials that they have on there, like Johnny Manziel is literally giving up all the information about the things that he did where he should have been ineligible and shouldn't have a trophy either. So I think it was the right thing to do. And the further we got away from his Heisman getting taken away, I think the more foolish this looked. And now, especially, landscape where you do whatever you want to do, nobody's enforcing any type of rules. It felt like it was right. So I'm glad to see it. I saw a lot of discourse online as he was getting it back where people are like, I would have never given it back to the Heisman Trust in the first place. And I'm like 99% sure that the Heisman Trophy probably has a sticker on the bottom that says like property of the Heisman Trust. Like they loan it out to you as long as you're in good standing, much like an Emmy or some of these other awards that you win. So that's why he gave it back. But it was great seeing him. Older Reggie Bush, not the one that I'm familiar with from elementary school, holding this trophy. It's what we all wanted to see.
Yeah, it was good to see that. I think everybody was happy about it. Long overdue, I believe. I'm glad that finally, Joshua, in an era where logic seems to stand still sometimes, And we have a lot of things that are happening in the world. We're like, that doesn't make any logical sense. Why can't we just do it this way or do it that way or make this decision or that decision? The decision for the Heisman Trust to come out and say, you know what? Yeah, let's get this back to you. The irony is, and I tell people, like, I love Reggie. I think he probably should have won it in '04 over Leinart because I think in '05 it probably should have been Vince. And it was always kind of remarkable that he didn't win it based upon the year that he had, which kind of came out of nowhere. Had a
Right.
good finish to his junior year, but his senior year was absolutely tremendous there at Texas, and obviously beat us in 2005 in the horseshoe as well en route to national championship, which they beat that USC team ultimately as well. And it gets everybody thinking. You were part of a 2012 situation at Ohio State, Joshua, and I don't know if they give back wins or from 11 or however that all works, but like with where we're at now, do you ever sit back and think kind of what might have been in that 2012 year?
It might have been, probably would have been a national title win because it was a Notre Dame Alabama game, and Alabama went out there and stomped Notre Dame. But it would have been us in there with Notre Dame, and that was the team that we probably would have beaten a national title. So maybe we line it up right now. We get all the guys who would have been on the roster at that point. We get them all back out there, and we play that same game today to see who the rightful national title, the national champion is from that year. It does bring up the question, though, in reality about Tat Gate and the Tattoo Five and what should go on there. And they've been very outspoken about, how they feel now in this day and age that they've been wrong. And I think it's even different from Reggie's situation where, they were being given things without necessarily they're
Yeah.
just showing up, you get a house. Like these cats are talking about their own things that they're trading for something of value, which seems even more ridiculous nowadays. And it would be nice to see some wins restored. And I think like vacating wins is one of the craziest things that we do because we saw the games.
Yeah.
We know who won the game. So just restore the records and let's just be comfortable doing that.
Yeah. And the irony is too, is they knew about that and they cleared it. I think they vacated the 2010 season, but they kept in place the 2010 Sugar Bowl that was after that, which I don't understand because they knew about all of it at that point in time. Like, oh yeah, this is going to be good because we've already set the game and it's Ohio State, Arkansas, and it's going to rate really big. We want to make sure that we're playing this. Forget about the rest of it, and we'll wipe away some of the other stuff. And the vacated wins, like to me, it goes down to like a lot of times the coaches because that's really what their legacy is tied to. And to
Right.
see those wins restored for Jim Tressel, I think it would mean something. Like outside of that, we watch the games. We know they happen. There's guys that played in them. They know that they were real. And so it's not a big deal. But as far as like the records, when you see stuff of where guys rank and a guy
Yes.
like Jim Tressel who'd had a lot of success, that's where I'm like, you know what? Guy's in his 70s now. He didn't do anything like relative to what's going on. Like we're talking about trading trinkets for tattoos as opposed to dudes driving around in Ferraris and Bentleys and everything else that we got going today. It's just a crazy, crazy situation with that. But coming up next, we've got our favorite segment. It's a little tailgate talk, and we'll get all your questions answered and maybe a little portal news that's happening as that's going to be open here until Tuesday, I believe, at midnight. Take a short break. We'll be right back here with the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, welcome back into the program, our favorite segment each and every week, Tailgate Talk, where we answer your questions. And we got our first question coming from Sean Jimenez. Breakout player this season, Joshua, that nobody's talking about. Who you got?
All right, I give you two guys. There's been a lot of conversation about linebackers, Sonny Styles and CJ Hicks, but it's Cody Simon. It's a guy that's been around. I think that he's got a chance to just have a stellar year. Provides a ton of leadership. He's been in the system for a while. Super smart guy, knows exactly what he's doing. I think he's well trusted by the coaches and the teammates. As a last go, I think he's going to want to put some really good stuff on wax there. The other one is on the offensive line. We've talked about a million positions and a million combinations there. And one guy who I thought continued to get better and has not actually been on campus for a calendar year yet, Josh Simmons, I think could be really, really good. He's got all the physical capabilities. I thought there were moments where he truly flashed. He's still putting the game together, but now having that time in the building, having that time being coached and developed, I think this could be a big one for him.
I like the Simmons because I think he is an immature player, not in a bad way, just hasn't had the exposure to big time football
Right.
expectations, like the weight room, like all those things. Now you feel like you're starting to come together. You put him in another spring to go through against a really elite defensive line. I like that. For me, I'll go with the offensive side. I'll go with Jelani Thurman, the tight end.
Mm.
Uh, Big guy, tons of ability, can really run, needs to step up a little bit on his consistency piece. It's a little bit the same thing with Simmons, and this is what you get with young guys. They'll flash, and then they'll have plays where it's like, hey, what are we doing right there? Like, this isn't high school. You can't just take that play off because you didn't think it was going to you or you didn't think you were of consequence. You got to get out of your stance and be ready to rock. But he's got everything you need. I think another summer of kind of mental hardening, I would kind of say, just sharpening of your mind. That'll be a big opportunity for him. Really excited for that. Uh, Next question coming from Fretwood Mac here. Marvin Harrison Jr. signing with New Balance, kind of outside of like your normal realm, Nike, Adidas, Under Armour. Go with New Balance. Surprised about that.
I think so. As you mentioned, it's not the thing that people have done, right? Like it's a Nike, it's Adidas, but I think this is an opportunity, number one, for a brand that's made a huge resurgence. And like, back when I was a kid, if you were wearing New Balance, people were, do your parents love
As your
you?
parents'
Like,
shoes. Yeah.
yeah, like why would they send you to school wearing those shoes? Now they're cool and they've got a bunch of athletes on their roster now. Haven't done a ton of venturing into football, but I could definitely see the fit. I'm trying to pull up the athletes here too because
I
I
think they
do
got
think
Chase
they have
Young signed with them last year.
they have a unique roster because they've got Kawhi Leonard in there who is like super good, kind of quiet dude, like a little bit
Minus the
reserved guy.
kinda.
They got Shohei Ohtani, and his name's been circulating in the news, but he's a real quiet dude, very reserved. And you get Marv, who
Quiet dude.
like really good player, quiet dude, kind of
Yeah.
reserved. Like I think they kind of have a type when it comes to their athletes.
I like that. And maybe that'll be it. Like our guys play and their shoes, like their play does the talking. And maybe that's kind of what they're looking at. Cause that I haven't really thought about it, but that's a pretty interesting kind of theme that you see permeate through all three of those guys that you mentioned there. Really good players, but very a little more, use the term introverted, maybe not as socially outgoing, especially active on social media and everything else. And then the last one coming out that we kind of talked off air, Jihad Carter entering the transfer portal. That's three Buckeyes now, and portal closes Tuesday night, I believe, at midnight. Um, Not really surprised about this when you look at how good two veteran safeties were with Lathan, and then you saw Caleb Downs. Both those guys really saw it, and then the emergence of young guys. It just seemed like he was getting squeezed a little bit.
Yeah, no, now again, don't mean to be disrespectful here, but I saw the post come up on 11 Warriors and I had kind of forgotten that he was on the roster there. And those are the types of guys that you see who want to make a move, especially in the springtime where you don't have the whole offseason to get ready for the upcoming season. But the secondary, I feel like, is in as good of a spot as any collective position room in the country. Plenty of great top line players, but also a lot of young depth that's kind of chasing there. And they're putting pressure on older guys to make sure that they're on point all the time. And for Ohio State, the spring portal has been really good to them. They've had 3 departures there. Certainly guys that didn't figure to be a huge part of the mix this upcoming fall. And, talked to a couple people in the building. I think guys are really excited about the prospects of what they can do this year. But the other part is the coaches are coaching everybody. So they feel like even if they're not going to play, they're still getting coached and they're getting coached hard. So they feel like they're getting better anyway.
Oh, because they want to see what they can do. And the reality is, you're going to want to make sure that those guys are ready and they're getting reps during the season. Because as we talked, 16 and 17 games, that's a Herculean achievement to play that and stay healthy. So you need your young guys to be locked in and ready to go. So Lathan Ransom has played a lot of football. He doesn't need to be in the second half of games early
Right.
in the season. So you want to get those young guys out there and see what they can do. All right, coming up next, we're going to talk a little Rookie of the Year odds brought to you by Tipico, who should be the favorite there? We'll find out here next on the Bobby Carpenter Show. All right, we've got some rookie of the year odds brought to you by Tipico Sportsbook. They're going to change the way you bet with their new Tipico Rewards program. The more you bet, the more you earn, and the more you can win. And to celebrate this big play, we're holding our own company-wide contest to see which of our shows can climb the leaderboard and prove that they are the best bettors here at Big Play Winning Show. Well, they may even give out some bet credits to their listeners each month. So be sure to follow along with us with each of your favorite Big Play personalities on social media to lock in your bets with us each and every week. Must be 21 years in order to gamble. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. And so Tipico, Josh, where they put up their rookie of the year odds way too early. You know, Caleb Williams, Jaden Daniels, Drake May, JJ McCarthy, Malik Neighbors, Rome Odunze, Brock Bowers, Marvin Harrison. Who do you like right there? Who should be the favorite? And I know some of it's kind of contingent on potentially position and then supporting cast around you as well.
Yeah, I think that's probably the biggest thing. Like I look at Marv and you feel like he's in a solid spot. If Kyler Murray can stay healthy and stay off of Call of Duty, you know, it could be a really good connection there for those two. I'll ask this question. And I know the answer to it. Has there been a number one overall pick that's gone to a better situation than Caleb Williams? Because they did a lot of work this offseason to get that offense together. You know, they made some trades last year to put that offense in. He's going to be throwing to some really talented players. I think the run game is going to be improved. The defense played much better toward the end of the year. I'm looking at Caleb, and if he's not good, that's an issue.
They brought in DJ Moore. Who else did they just sign at receiver this year?
Keenan Allen.
Keenan Allen, that's right. So Keenan Allen brought him over from the Chargers. Yeah. Got him over from the Chargers, you know, and then you bring in Rome Odunze, obviously, who's got a ton of ability too. So he should have opportunities there to throw the ball. I'm looking around like Malik Neighbors. You feel like maybe in New York, a lot of that depends on how good their quarterback play is there. Yeah, I'm not sold on Danny Dimes.
How about JJ McCarthy with his situation? Because he's walking into an offense that's really good.
Yes, and that's sneaky. And he doesn't have to be great.
Nope.
Because you've got great players around you that will be able to do it for you after the catch. You know, I think that I would probably handicap this. Jaden Daniels, they've got to get their offensive line shirt up a little bit.
They do.
But he's got some, I mean, he's got our guy over there playing receiver.
Terry.
Yeah, Scary Terry. You feel good about that with what he's able to do. They brought in Austin Eckler, too. I forgot about that. Jahan Dotson, Zach Ertz. So they've got some weapons. Penix, you feel like he's probably not going to play this year.
No.
But there's good weapons there. McCarthy, like, that's the one. You know, he's got TJ Hawkinson, Justin Jefferson, Jordan Addison, Aaron Jones. I mean, it's a sweet spot for JJ if he can stay healthy. And he's just got to be Kirk Cousins, which Kirk Cousins he just didn't make mistakes.
And it feels like JJ can be Kirk Cousins. The one thing about JJ McCarthy is his bad games have been horrific. I think he loses his mind sometimes, but outside of that, like Michigan asked him to do essentially what he would need to do in this offense. We're going to do play action pass. We're going to focus on the run game. Then we're going to take some shots down the football field. He threw the shots to Roman Wilson. He'll be able to throw them to JJ. Like, I don't know, man. It feels like he's walking into a phenomenal situation.
And I think Bo Nix could either have a really good or really bad rookie year. So we'll see where that goes to, depending on what they do in Denver. Joshua, we appreciate it. Thank you all for tuning in. Like, subscribe, comments. We appreciate you watching this edition of the Bobby Carpenter Show.